Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to welcome you back to the next session. As you have seen from the program, we have decided this year to actually devote 2 sessions to the refugee crisis and migration issues in a broader sense. As you are all aware, Europe is coping with this crisis, and the summit, the EU summit on Thursday and the EU summit with Turkey on Friday shows that things are moving very rapidly in Europe these days. The German Marshall Fund works a lot on migration issues, and we do this in various ways. As you're aware, we put a strong focus on European issues, and we run a Europe program which looks at Europe's multiple crises and challenges, but also the opportunities that lie in it. And the migration issue, we not only look at it from a think tank perspective, but we use the tools we have, and that is, of course, also our convenings. And just to give you one example of the work we are doing, just 2 weeks back, we took a group of European parliamentarians to Greece. We took them to Athens, and we took them to Lesbos, and we showed them what is happening on the ground. And I can tell you that this experience was really transformative for those who were there, not only because they saw what is happening in Greece on a day-to-day basis, but also because they had a true trans-European conversation. We not only invest a lot of time in the European conversation of the issue, but also in a transatlantic conversation, which in my view is very important. And here we have other tools and programs that work on this issue. If you take our migration work, which looks a lot at integration also and how this is happening and has happened over decades in the United States, Europe has a lot to learn from that. It also concerns our work on urban issues. So I'm very pleased that we are able to devote 2 sessions to this pressing issue today. And if I may leave you with one thought. Yes, Europe is in crisis. Europe is facing multiple challenges within the European Union and on its borders. But if we take the Eurozone issues, I remember many, many times that I was told, in particular by non-European observers, that Europe is about to fall apart. And in fact, through the Eurozone crisis, Europe has become stronger. Now, the next panel is called The Refugee Crisis, a stress test for Europe. In fact, usually stress tests are used to identify the weaknesses. So my hope is that Europe will actually emerge from this challenge in a stronger way. And I hope our panel will show some of those ways. So I'd like to hand the floor over to Max Hofmann, who is the bureau chief of Deutsche Welle in Brussels. Sorry. Max, please introduce your distinguished panel.
First, say a video. Great. Thank you very much, Daniela. Welcome to this panel. I think we're all familiar with the topic, but before we introduce the guests, we have a short video that we would like to show you.
For many, the refugee and migration situation is the biggest stress test to the European Union to date. Rules that applied once, such as the Dublin and Schengen regulations, are clearly out of order, and a common European asylum system seems far away. Borders have been closed, and member states have both acted unilaterally and without coordination, and have quarreled over quotas and the meaning of solidarity as a European Union. Hopes to manage the situation rest on a deal with Turkey. But this approach is being met with wide skepticism, as it is not clear whether Turkey can and will deliver on its promise to patrol borders and take back refugees, and whether the EU member states will be able to coordinate on a resettlement scheme as proposed by Turkey. What are the chances of reaching a coordinated approach on the refugee situation among EU member states in the next few months? What are the biggest challenges to a common European asylum system? What are future elements of a European humanitarian protection system in times of continued and future crises?
So, welcome again. I think, like I said, this topic, really, we live and we breathe it here in Brussels at the moment, especially also yesterday and the day before. And yesterday might have been one of those days where we really saw how 2 major topics that the European Union is dealing with at the moment are coming together. We also saw it in November. One of them, of course, is the migration crisis, and the other one is terrorism. And I don't know if you remember, back then we had, in Malta, we had the Refugee Summit, and that day those attacks happened on the 13th of November. It's hard to take them apart. Of course, we have 2 guests here that couldn't be more ideal to talk about the topic, especially after what happened yesterday. That is, of course, Commissioner Kristalina Georgieva, who is here today, Vice President of this commission, but obviously also Commissioner in the Barroso Commission back then for humanitarian aid, which is of utmost interest, and all people from Washington know her also as a Vice President of the World Bank. Thank you very much for coming. You can give her a hand.
And thank you very much for having me.
All right. And then, of course, we have Minister Volkan Bozkir, who's been around Brussels. We figured that out earlier for 16 years now in various positions. Now, of course, the EU Minister for Turkey. And that makes him incredibly interesting for today. Always interesting, but especially interesting today because he's also the chief negotiator for Turkish accession to the European Union. So thank you very much for being here as well. Minister, we as journalists, we were thinking we would be up all night, Thursday to Friday, and then again from Friday to Saturday, and then just come here directly. It all went quite smooth. Why?
Well, I think the time was fairly used and very professionally, and both sides were flexible. It doesn't mean that the technocrats who worked for this deal did sleep during the night of Thursday.
They did not sleep.
They did not sleep.
Okay.
So actually, it's the architecture of those wonderful people who did this deal. But of course, this didn't start yesterday. It started perhaps in the summer of last year. So it was building on the assessments and negotiations and evaluations. So I think the final deal came when two sides reached to the correct conclusion and looking to the correct photograph. And I think this is the achievement of yesterday.
Commissioner, is this the kind of deal the Commission was hoping for?
It is certainly part of a solution to what we face today. Very important to agree because what the deal states is the obvious. We are in this together. We are facing a problem that affects the whole world, but in particular, our part of the world. And we can deal with it only if we find the pathways to cooperate. 2 points. One, in this deal, we recognize that unless we collectively battle the interests of the traffickers, unless we make it possible for people to come legally, they would continue to struggle to come illegally, and this has turned into a business competing with the drug trade, with all the dangers that it carries. And part of the deal is to address this. And two, Turkey deserves to be supported financially because it is the biggest refugee-receiving country. And it has done a very good job to host people fleeing primarily from the Syria war.
If I may just jump in there for one thing, the EU realizing that they need Turkey is one thing. But sometimes, at least we journalists give the impression that this deal was only struck because EU leaders said, okay, we just can't get on the same page. This is our way out. Do you share that impression?
I think the EU leaders recognize that this problem is going to be with us. By the way, not just only with us in Europe. If you look at our conversations on refugees, it has been primarily about the 1.5 million people that came to Europe. How about the 59 million people that haven't come to Europe but are pushed out of their homes by wars and natural disasters? And their numbers are going like this.
But that's my point. In the agreement from yesterday, you mentioned the leaders mentioned 72,000 migrants that they would be, or Syrian refugees that they would be willing to take back directly from Turkey. Now, that just seems so ridiculously low compared to the numbers you're talking about.
Well, let's remember that to deal with this problem, we need to do two things. One, to address the root cause. And root causes are the wars. Unless we find ways to prevent conflicts and resolve conflicts a little faster, unless we face the reality that we now have Al-Shabaab, Al-Qaeda, Islamic State, Boko Haram, rebels that have no interest whatsoever to become governments. They just want to kill us and scare us and deal with this problem as a world community. And of course, Europe has to play its role. And secondly, we have to do much more for people where they are. Unless we pay not just for food and shelter, but also for schools and jobs, for people that are affected by crisis in Lebanon, in Jordan, in Ethiopia, in Kenya, in Yemen. Unless we do that, then of course the 72,000 you talk about, this is going to be a drop in the world. And of course, the deal doesn't say we would stop at 72,000. It says we will start with 72,000.
Minister, when I look at interviews with you two years ago, the game has completely changed. Back then you said we need to talk more, we need to do more together. When did you feel that the European Union has said, okay, we really need to cooperate more with Turkey?
Well, I think Turkey was saying two things and warning about two dangers. One was fight against terrorism, and one was this illegal migration. An earthquake took place in our region, and I think the tsunami or the aftershocks was very much apparent that it was coming. But unfortunately, the European countries or the European Union didn't listen to the warnings carefully. So when the tsunami came, it was like the picture of that person taking photograph when the tsunami wave was coming. So it hit. But Turkey was saying that this problem must be solved at the source. So if we had worked together 2 years ago, when we first warned, it would have been much easier to face this. But now the correct picture is being seen now. The first approach to Turkey was, okay, let's give you 500 million euros from the funds you will be using to become member, and you solve this problem. And we said, look, we don't need money. We have already spent $10 billion, and this money is not going to solve anything, and Turkey doesn't want money. So what we have asked for, this is a problem which we can face together. The responsibilities should be shared, but you must make Turkey feel like in the family again after 10 years of slowdown in relations, not seeing each other, talk each other. So I think it started when we started feeling ourselves more in the family. Then we took more responsibilities. We came out with practical solutions, sharing of the burden proposals. So that brought us to this point. So that is the result of a wonderful cooperation which we had for some few months now.
Which part of the agreement makes you feel especially more part of the family?
Well, actually, if you make comparisons, we have been in a situation where we weren't invited to summit meetings, no chapters were opened, we were not having a chance to say our feelings or vision in the meeting. So now, after the 29th of November summit meeting, it was kind of a new re-energized relation, where we talked about fighting against illegal migration, but also Turkey was invited to summit meetings. New platforms were established, energy, economy, political platforms, upgrading the customs union, where we have $150 billion of trade to a level of $300 billion of a trade. And then this came out to be a new relation, re-energized, what we call. But from 29th of November to 7th of March, this wasn't sufficient. That was seen that the numbers were falling down of illegal migration, but unfortunately it wasn't going down to zero. So what was achieved yesterday is an attack on this problem to bring it down to zero, both sides taking responsibilities. And I think this is the heart of the problem. This is going to work like this. We will take, I mean, there is a D-Day, which is on Monday. The Greek
so from
island,
the night from Sunday to Monday,
exactly.
midnight.
Everybody who reaches the Greek islands as an illegal migrant will be registered and will be sent back to Turkey, no matter if he or she is a Syrian or Iraqi or whatever. But for every person coming back to Turkey, one Syrian in the camps in Turkey will be going to Europe legally as a human being, and this will work like this. And in relation with this, of course, some elements were added to that to make Turkey feel in the family, which, for example, abolishing the visa, and also an additional 3 billion euros to the already agreed 3 billion euros. But this money is not to Turkey. We're not going to build bridges or
Projects.
airports with that. It is for the Syrian people living in Turkey. It will be hospitals, schools, infrastructure, food, have them better life. And in Turkey, we have given them working permission so that they will prefer to stay in Turkey. And we have also imposed visa for Syrian citizens coming to Turkey. So all this is a package, and we're looking forward to the results. I think it will be the key to solve this problem at this moment.
By the way, just wanted to remind our audience, whenever you have questions, I'm ready to hand it over to the floor. We're not going to wait till the end, so whenever you want to. Just one more question before we do that. Commissioner, there have been so many decisions by the leaders about the refugee crisis, and none really has worked so far. This, what you're asking, or what the leaders are asking from Greece now, sounds a lot more complicated, with all the an asylum process, for example, within a week, than anything they had to do before. Why should this work this time?
I mean, the question we were asked is, if that was the stress test, what does it show? And what it shows is, indeed, we have had removal of internal borders without protecting the external borders. That has to be fixed. We have proposed to have a new agency that would be kind of Frontex plus to strengthen that. What we felt in the test is our ability to collectively absorb people who are coming to Europe, and we are still struggling to get to that point. By the way, it has shown something very interesting for people like me that come from new member states, that 26 years is a very short period of time, that those of us who lived on the other side of the Iron Curtain actually do not have the cultural tune to live with people that are different, and that has shown in the reaction of Visegrad countries in particular. So we have to overcome this, and we are making strides in that direction. We also have seen very clearly that Europe is not really able to put its best foot forward when we do the things right. I mean, take the Syria conference that took place in London. We did the right thing, but maybe because of our nature...
Donating a lot of money.
Not only we gave a lot of money, I mean, look at the outcome of the conference was over $11 billion, most of it coming from Europe, but most critical for those of us who have been working on humanitarian affairs. In this conference, we raise money for education and for jobs as priority, recognizing that it has to be a multi-year commitment for this. So we did the right thing, but Europeans tend to not actually then stand up and say, well, on the stress test, on this one, we passed. So my broader point is, yes, there are things we still have to do better, but if you look at where we were and where we are now, like with the Eurozone crisis, we are climbing the mountain.
Even in Greece?
Oh, Sorry, of course, even in Greece. In Greece, it is very difficult because the pressure on Greece, on the Greek people, is enormous, and it comes on top of the crisis that have been living through for a long time. We are still short in terms of the human capacity that we promised Greece. Now we need to get 4,000 people to go and work in Greece to help Greece with legal matters and so forth. But if you watch what has happened in the last two months in Greece, the hotspots are working. Practically almost everybody who comes to Greece is being registered, and that was not the case a couple of months ago. And we are finally seeing people from Greece going to other countries faster. Reception capacity in Greece has increased. I was in Athens when we worked with UNHCR to open up 20,000 places for people when they come. So of course we worry, and I'm sure our Turkish friends worry. This is a complex deal. Of course there would be ups and downs. But my plea to us is to be a little less European this time around. And when we do something right, talk about it, rather than keep talking about what has gone wrong.
So we have a question right over here. Might I remind the audience, one question per person, and the shorter, the better. Thank you. Go ahead.
Giles Merritt from Brussels think tank Friends of Europe. About 5 or 6 years ago, in 2010, a wise men's group headed by Felipe González from Spain reported that for purely economic reasons, labour force, ageing Europe needed to import by mid-century 100 million people. That works out about twice the volume of last year. The Commission has never echoed that wise men's group. Is that a reflection of a lack of political courage?
We have done a number of reports in the Commission. Others, not only the Wise Men Group, has said Europe is aging very fast. For the new member states in Europe, there was a report from red to grey talking about this demographic problem. What I think has happened is that simultaneously we face aging and a very serious demographic cliff we may fall off. But we also are facing a much more anxious world, and terrorism, unfortunately, overlays with the migration crisis. And that is what makes it so much more complicated. What we see in Europe is increase of populist parties. They're driving an agenda that unfortunately goes against our very obvious economic interest. The Commission did an analysis of the impact of people coming to Europe with this refugee wave, and we concluded that it would be 0.2 to 0.4% increase in GDP. In other words, it would be positive. But to translate this into an acceptance in a society that is so anxious, and I'm going back to what I said before, look at the incredible change in terms of place of bad people in our neighborhoods. That, of course, is scaring many of us. Do we have to step up on integrating people? Absolutely, yes. Question is, how do you do it when people are anxious? I mean, look at the US politics and what is happening there. Look at Europe and our little kind of similar. It is grounded in anxiety. My broad conclusion is that the world may be richer, but it is much more fragile. And we, as humanity, have not yet integrated how we deal with this limping from one crisis to another, to another, to another, and yet keep people positive and willing to actually go for importing the youthful population we need.
Minister, do you feel like, looking from the outside to the European Union, that the EU is over-anxious? Do you share that view?
Well, I think the terminology is, I think Europe had made a wrong calculation and wrong evaluation. Because when this was coming, we were talking about a $6 billion organizational scheme in the world, like the drug smuggling or arms smuggling. There are organizers who benefit from poor people's fortunes. And so it's very difficult to fight. But there was a problem in Syria, and this was coming. So in Turkey, we have 2,700,000 Syrian guests, as we call. 700,000 of them are needing education. We're giving education to 250,000. It will go up to 450,000. 150,000 child is born. And not a single person in Turkey has come out saying that, why am I sharing my job? Why am I sharing my bread? But it was absorbed in Turkey. But when it came to Europe, Europe was not ready for that. So for a few hundred people, a country is making a referendum. The other is capturing all the belongings and selling them and trying to overcome the costs. So
I think Commissioner has a direct reply to that. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, I just want to say that actually we did see it coming. In 2.5 years ago, I personally wrote a blog, and the title was Trouble Travels. And it said, unless we stop the war in Syria, unless we take care of the people in Lebanon, in Jordan, in Turkey, sooner or later this is going to come and hit us. Now, what is the problem? And of course, I presented this to our foreign affairs ministers, and they all said, yeah, that's really bad thing coming. The problem is that we people, all of us, we have a tendency to close our eyes when the news is bad and pray it is going to pass over our heads. Why do we smoke when we know this is bad for our health? And when do we stop? Doctor says you have lung cancer, next day you stop smoking. And I think that this tendency to drive the car looking in the rearview mirror only is a global phenomenon. We have to figure out how to overcome it.
So the EU has lung
confirming what
cancer?
I said,
I
Commissioner.
do, Minister. Yes.
Sorry, ma'am, you had a question?
Hi, I'm Nancy Lindborg with the U.S. Institute of Peace. And my question is, you know, Kristalina, you noted quite rightly that the 59 million people that are not reaching Europe are something that we need to keep our eyes firmly focused on. My question is, how does this extraordinary crisis in Europe not prevent the focus from still being on the 59 million? And what do you see as the key steps towards addressing that larger set of fragility and crisis issues?
It is a great question, Nancy, and great to see you. First, for us in Europe, there is a real danger that national governments would prioritize investments domestically for the refugees and take money away from their official development assistance to do so. For a short period of time, this is okay, because we do have to take care of people when they come. But if we don't draw a lesson that we have to invest much more in these situations of fragility elsewhere, and that we have to come up with sustained, predictable, long-term commitment to fund people that are affected by these disasters, to give them not only food, but hope, and something that they feel that we don't forget about them sustainably. I co-chaired a panel on humanitarian finance, as you know. We came up with the conclusion that in our world that produces $78 trillion GDP, we continue to be $15 billion short to take care of people that for not fault of their own are in these desperate situations. And I call this the world's most important solvable problem. And if we draw any conclusion in Europe today, it has to be never to move our eyes from the suffering of people that creates instability that sooner or later we also will pay for. It is morally right, but it is also in our collective interest to make this investment and make it in a sustainable manner.
It seems, though, at least from the outside, that member states are not on the same page for that, that not all the countries really have understood that. You would agree, right?
Well, they kind of moving in that direction. Again, I'm going to the Syria. I'm going to the Syria conference that, for reasons that I failed to understand, was left not so noticed. What happened there was Slovakia, for example, a country that has been very anxious on receiving refugees, made for the size of Slovakia a sizable commitment. Financial commitment. My country, Bulgaria, which is still...
Which might be the next frontier for the...
Could be. I was going to say still the poorest, but not forever. It's not going to stay there. Country in the EU. It made a contribution to the Syria conference. Small, but symbolically important. We start to realize that, and I think we need to drum up this message more. Invest where the root of the problem is, if you don't want another tsunami to come and hit you.
Question for the minister? Anyone? For the minister? Go ahead. Hang on, we have a microphone.
Good to see you.
I'm a member of the Council of State of Spain.
Good to see you,
But
Minister.
Here today, I'm one of the millions of Europeans that for many years have understood that a honest negotiation and a negotiation in good faith with Turkey was a priority, and that we were not on the European side, we were not fulfilling this attitude. And the Minister, we have discussed this many times, but on what you said, Minister, that you wanted to be back into the family. Frankly, there is an elephant in the room that you can go outside and you can see it. The impression your government gives is that, for instance, chapter 24, if I could address this one, or 23, or in general, the Copenhagen criteria is not what concerns or what is a priority for your government. And this is something that has to be addressed.
What's the question in that?
The question is, what is, I mean,
I
you
understood
say
the
that your attitude, you want to be part of the family. From our side, it's a very awkward way to want to be part of the family, to close a month the day before you start the conversations.
So maybe let me phrase the question, or did you want to react directly?
I understood the question. The problem is, if you keep Turkey away from Europe, you will never have a chance to criticize, make positive comments, so that we can benefit from it. Chapter 23, Chapter 24, those chapters are for political criteria. Chapter 24 is for fight against illegal migration, border controls, have better passports. And we can't open those chapters. We want to open those chapters. And if the political decision is taken, we can open them in 2 months. But the problem is, for political reasons, because of one member country doesn't want to open some chapters, and we insisted those chapters to be opened as well, so that your criticisms will be on proper platforms, listened by us. Perhaps what we say can be registered by you. Some of those criticisms I don't think are based on correct information. Some of them we can take into consideration. We have to work together to make Turkey a better country in environment, food security, in democracy, human rights. But we're not starting from today. We changed 2,000 laws in Turkey because of this EU process. The constitution has been changed. So let us work together. And if Turkey is feeling like in the family, as I mentioned, then there will be proper platforms where we can register your criticism. Perhaps you can understand that Turkey should be on the train going to Brussels than looking for other trains in the region. That is very important. The more you make Turkey feel like this, then we will have a better platform where we can understand each other, and you will have a better Turkey approaching to you. If Turkey was a member, or if this process was not slowed down, we wouldn't have been talking on these issues.
Minister, do you understand that many people are upset about how Turkey handles, for example, some basic civil liberties? Just Zaman, what happened with that, with the newspaper? I think that's what you're getting to too. Isn't that something that needs to change in Turkey?
Well, that this is looking to a small part of the photograph. In Turkey, we have 7,500 newspapers, 300 television channels, and 5 million circulation. 36 million people every day is going into the internet. 11 million tweets are being tweeted every day. So we're talking about this Turkey when there's nobody, a minister, ambassador, whoever, also a journalist, doesn't have the privilege to do something against law. And journalistic activity must be separated from what the actual criminal things are being done. So we can talk about this. There are journalists, identity bearers, who are in prison because they robbed a bank or killed a police officer or put bombs somewhere. And they are in the lists of the credible institutions considered as journalists. But they are not in jail because they are journalists, but because they have done criminal activities. So this is, we have to look at the whole picture. And if you come to Turkey and zap in your hotel during the night, you will see that in every channel there is a debate criticizing the president, favoring the president, criticizing the prime minister, sometimes shooting at me. But I mean, this is lively there. But we can work together. And if Turkey is pushed outside, then you don't have a chance even to convey your messages directly to the decision makers.
So hoping for transformation also in Turkey because of that agreement. Commissioner, you wanted to react.
I wanted to say, one, that yes, opening up negotiations in these chapters, we know it from history, this is the best expression of soft power that has been ever invented. The EU helping countries to move up in terms of respect for rights, for inclusion. But question to the audience, do you know that there would be a chapter opened and it is called Chapter 33? How many of you know what is Chapter 33? You're my people.
It's you know that because it's your chapter.
And I know by heart.
This is the silver lining for me, because 33 is the budget chapter. How much Turkey is going to pay into the EU budget?
Yeah, but a very unproblematic chapter. It's uncontroversial. I mean, would Cyprus, for example, have been okay with opening other chapters?
Well, actually, I didn't want to mention the name of that particular country who blocks 13 chapters. You did it, but actually, the problem is that because of some political considerations, 8 chapters by a council decision is blocked. But there are 5 chapters unilaterally blocked by a political decision. So we said there's a difficulty here. The European Union's future is in danger. Schengen system is in danger. Euro system is in danger. And what we're doing here is to, in a way, save the future of Europe. And the country-based considerations should not be blocking this. But we couldn't do that. There was another country who was blocking 5 chapters. And that country, with the change of a president, allowed those 3 chapters to be open. 33 is one of them. So the political leadership shown by that country has not been shown by the other country, if I may say so. But I mean, the commissioner puts the opening of a chapter again in the money. Turkey can provide Europe with more money than any member country can do. We're not in a difficult situation. We are the only country, together with Germany, who is adhering to the Maastricht criteria. We were warning Europe again that this economic disaster is coming. There are countries who are not doing what the Maastricht criteria is requiring. So some countries might go into difficulty and do what Turkey is doing. When economic difficulty was with Europe, Turkey tripled the economic figures. Everything was tripled. So there was something wrong in Europe, something right in Turkey. So we do it together and benefit from the results. And Turkey is there to share the burden, to give new impetus, not to create problems. So that's where we are. And we will be very happy to open Chapter 33 with this charming commissioner, which I admire very much of what she has done until now.
She can be very, very tough. Anyway, we have time for a couple more questions. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to take all the questions, but let's get on with them, gentlemen, right here.
Christoph von Marschall from Germany. I would like to ask you to help us to solve what I might call the German conundrum or the German paradox. And I ask you really a frank answer, not a polite or diplomatic one. What is Germany's role in this migration crisis from your point of view? On one side, it seemed to be very isolated with its first approach, but of course, in forging the deal with Turkey, Germany was again center. So how does that place together? Being a leader who nobody wants to follow on one side, and on the other hand, having an important role. What's your picture of Germany?
I think the German Chancellor saw earlier than the others in Europe the danger coming, and she really evaluated correctly, saying that there's a problem here. There's a wave of refugees coming, and it cannot be stopped. And she said it shouldn't be stopped either. But the problem is to stop the illegal migration and change it, transform it to a legal migration. I think this was very important from the evaluation of the difficulty, but also what she has done is in line with the European values and standards. I think she will be remembered in the future for, at this difficult moment, still defending the values and standards, because these poor people shouldn't have been treated improperly, and they should have been treated as human beings. And that's what Germany has done. There might be some reactions from other countries, but I think at these crucial moments, those who have the leadership capacity will be remembered. So I think we have supported what she has done. We have really given credibility to what she has done, and she has been the main pillar of where we are now. If she wasn't there, we would have discussed with a gray cloud where nobody, in real terms, coming out ready to sacrifice, ready to take the responsibility and share the burden. And I think we're looking to a correct picture now, where it will be a burden sharing, but win and win situation, which will become more win and more win situation. It could have been a more disastrous situation very easily if this leadership wasn't taken by important leaders in the European Union platform.
We have a question. We had a question for a long time up there. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Rana Birden Çorbacıoğlu and representing Women in Foreign Policy, Istanbul, Turkey. Dear Minister, thank you very much for your insightful comments. Although that we do have some concern about the implementation of the deal, we are happy and acknowledge that Turkey and the EU is back on the table. However, you have clearly mentioned that this €3 billion will not spend any penny will be spent for Turkish community, and they will be directly going to Syrian committee. We do have a lot of question in mind that how those funds will be channeled and who will be manage these funds, and is there any specific and structured dialogue plan to involve civil society and to not only implementation part, but also the planning and also monitoring? Thank you very much.
Well, the system, if it works according to the existing mechanisms in Europe, we will get €100 million in 5 years, and that is how it works. But we have also discussed during these meetings that there is an urgent need for the Syrians in Turkey, and it has to be seen that this money is being used for their comfort and future. So we are trying to find new mechanisms, because in the existing system there is a steering committee where Turkey is not a member. We give our projects, the steering committee listens and then makes a decision without Turkey's presence. The money comes through international organizations. 15% of this money goes to the international organizations. That means €3 billion, 450 million euros will go to the international organization for doing nothing, just transferring the money. So we said, send this money directly to the Red Crescent or the organization who's dealing with these refugees in Turkey, and we can give the results, how we spend spend the money. As in the same system, we are spending the IPA funds or the Erasmus projects. The money must come to Turkey immediately so that it can be spent to schools, hospitals, infrastructure projects. We're spending 150 million euros every month to the camps for food and for the running of the camps. So we said, EU must run, for example, 10 of the camps, take all the costs, and this money goes to the running of the camps. If we want to bring these people to Syria, for example, in a safe area, that means thousands of people going to Syria in those comfortable areas, secure areas, so this money can be spent for that purpose as well. So this civil society organizations, that is the second stage. We can work with the civil society organizations. But here, the projects are ready. We have given them. But unfortunately, under this system, this money will not come to Turkey. We don't need that money. If the money comes or not, we are doing our part. But this is to satisfy perhaps the bad feelings of the European Union countries for not having been doing what they should. It comfort them that they are now adding to the human structures there. So, I mean, that is the deal we have achieved. And I hope that this money will come. Up to now, we received the promise of an 89 million euros, which didn't come in reality. But this is the situation.
Commissioner wanted to react.
Just to make it a little more positive, we have 2 projects already, because I'm in charge of 1/3 of the money that is coming your way. 2 projects that we are already funding. One is for children. 110,000 Syrian children would get education, additional to those that are being educated. And the second one is with the World Food Program for e-food, getting an e-card on which money is loaded. This is 95 million euros, Minister, that is now going towards the Syrians there. But just to defend a bit the EU, we are 20% of the world economy, but 40 to 50% of humanitarian aid and development assistance. And we have been always there for people in need, whenever they are. True, we could have been faster on our feet to work together with Turkey. I'm very glad that we now are doing it. But those of us that are Europeans in the audience, raise your hand. We can keep our heads up.
But people in Idomeni, I think, at the moment would disagree that
Where?
In Idomeni.
That, by the way, this is something. You're absolutely right. We have been a little slow on the uptake to recognize that the moment has come for the EU to provide humanitarian assistance inside the European Union. But we have taken a decision. I can announce this to those who may not know it. 3 weeks ago, we have taken a decision. We now have 300 million euros for this year, 200 and 200 for next year. Europeans are already in Greece working on the fact that we have to face it. Even on the territory of Europe, a country could be overwhelmed and may need to be helped. And that is now being done. True, could have done it faster, but here, message taken, action implemented.
We had a question for a long time right here. Thank you.
Natalie Docci from the Institute for International Affairs in Rome. I wanted to go back to the one-for-one deal on the refugees. And I was wondering whether there's not a sort of perverse inbuilt incentive in this agreement. Meaning, if the deal is actually implemented, which means that the irregular refugees, the numbers would go down, then presumably the number of legal refugees would also go down. So it would be simply a matter of time, days or weeks, for the irregular numbers to go back up again. So is there in the thinking, in the planning, the idea that after X amount of time, assuming the deal is actually implemented, that we would simply stop this one-for-one agreement and simply have legal channels into the European Union?
Well, the deal is working on the psychology of this migrant flow. If the psychology is not stopped showing that, I mean, this whole process started when they saw that there's a loophole from the Aegean coast to the Greek islands. So all the world was informed, refugees were collected, brought, and sent. So this, to stop the psychology, this will have a very important effect, because they will understand that after a while, they will not be allowed to stay in Greece. And as illegal migrants, they will be taken back to Turkey. And when the legal migrants are going to Europe, they will not have a chance to become legal migrants anytime in the future. So this psychology will, in a way, stop this part of the story. Of course,
if I may interrupt just really quickly, because that's what we were talking about earlier. How does that change psychologically anything if you have 2.7 million refugees and only 72,000 places? It's like playing lottery.
We're not trying to send 2,700,000 people to Europe.
But the incentive for the refugees is hard to calculate with those numbers.
2,700,000 people are in Turkey. We have taken the responsibility, we're looking after them, and this story is not to send those people to Europe.
And just to answer your question, of course, we need to look at the implementation and then draw lessons. And if we need to adjust, we adjust. And as I said before, the reason we start with 72,000 is because we want to see how this works. I mean, sending the illegal crossings to the end of the queue should create an incentive to register in Turkey, and of course we will have to then see would that mean that we take more people. But let's remember that we also have refugees in Lebanon, in Jordan. We have other refugees in addition to Syria. So Europe, in terms of our contribution to taking refugees historically, we have been pretty good, I mean, in global terms. But the fact remains that majority of displaced people go from one poor country to another. And I repeat my message, 90%, 85 to 90% of displacements are in poor countries. And unless we help these poor countries to deal with this in a humane and respectable manner, we are not doing our service to humanity properly.
Your question, go ahead.
Trudy Rubin from the Philadelphia Inquirer. I'd like to ask Commissioner Georgieva, has anything been learned in Europe so that the waves of refugees that have already been accepted can be integrated in ways that do not create new isolated communities, new Molenbeeks, or bidonvilles, or et cetera, et cetera. What will happen to these communities that are already there in terms of jobs, schools, and integration?
We have quite a diverse picture in Europe, responding to your question. Some countries have been more successful in integration, and usually these are the countries where a very serious effort is made for schools and jobs, vocational training. And of course, more often than not, these are also the countries and the communities that are economically more successful. You look at, for example, Sweden, a very good tradition in receiving people and then working on the integration of people in a very systematic way. But even Sweden today is overwhelmed. So we also have had some bad experiences in Europe, and we are trying to draw lessons from those as well. But fundamentally, if I can make a connection to the economy, fundamentally where Europe has to concentrate its efforts is to make our economy more competitive and stronger, because when we have more jobs for everybody, all other things equal, we can deal with this problem better. And when our economy is vibrant and competitive, then we have the resources and the confidence to cope with problems. So one of the issues that we are concerned in the Commission is that the migration crisis now being top of mind concern, it pushes down equally, if not more important, activities we do to stimulate investments. We have the investment plan for Europe, 76 billion euros generated of private investments through it. But even more importantly, deepening and broadening the internal market, digital market, energy union, capital union. Unless, and this is where we worry a little bit that our leaders' attention gets sucked into dealing with the crisis in front of us, and that may come at the expense of equally important other policy actions we have to take.
Hence, our title is, this is the ultimate stress test. We're going to have time probably for one more question, but I just wanted to say at the end of the session, we're going to ask you a multiple choice question via the app. So if you want to prepare that, then we can do that pretty quickly at the end. Ultimate stress test. Many of the things you just said showed how this refugee crisis is just putting everything else out of the picture. Do you have the impression, both of you, that the EU, as it is today in this form, can survive this, or will it, like, for example, the German finance minister Schäuble said for a long time, we need Europe at different speeds?
Well, we face two existential challenges at the same time. One is how we cope with the migration crisis, the capacity to define contributions depending on who can do what, rather than trying to fit everything in one type of solution. And two, exactly this question, part of Europe needs to integrate further and deeper, especially Eurozone, and we have to, at the same time, leave space for those who want to be looser integrated. And we would have, obviously, the UK referendum coming on that point. I remain optimistic for Europe. I don't know how Europe would look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. But what I do know is that we have invented in Europe the very best you can even dream of, and we sometimes forget how good Europe is. We are still the most equitable region in the world. We have invented the convergence engine to lift up those that are falling apart, lift them up. And we have managed, as Europe, to actually overcome historical, horrible differences. So, for us Europeans, I think the real stress test is, can we switch towards more optimism for Europe? Can we build more confidence for Europe? Can we stop saying what we do wrong and say more what we do right?
Oh, I think we'll have to put you on more panels.
Love each other. By the way, as in every family, of course, we would have quarrels in the family, always. And if you guys join the family, you would see what it means. But
yeah, we started seeing that already.
But we love our family, and our family will survive this stress test.
Minister, any thoughts?
Well, I think this is a wonderful mechanism, the European Union, Euro, the Schengen system. I think until we lose those, people will not understand how much comfort and pleasure these are giving to them. Eliminate the Schengen system, the border controls, passports. I mean, nobody perhaps a generation hasn't seen passing passport controls with a passport. So that will be a disaster psychologically. Or Euro. Eliminate it, then you go to the exchange bureaus in every country when you're visiting and changing your money. I mean, this will be a disaster. European Union itself is an attraction point. It has been a very good for all the countries in the world to see that this can happen. This is a good thing. But if this disappears, then it will be a very difficult moment in the world's history. So we have to do everything to keep this wonderful gathering, this existence in good shape. And of course, it is a critical moment. Some countries should take more responsibilities. And really, if this is postponed, and if these decisions are not taken now, as in every case, it will come back in a very more dangerous package, and perhaps it will not be a situation where we can handle it. So I think it is a crucial moment in European Union history, and we have to share it. But Turkey can contribute, because the problem is not just economic or fight against terrorism or fight against illegal migration. I think the values have changed. It's not a Christian club anymore. There is a need to eliminate the other, because if you don't eliminate the other, then you will have people who are unhappy. They will be the source of dangerous activities, terrorism or whatever, radicalism, xenophobia, Islamophobia. These must be erased from the European Union platforms, so that we look to the future where every citizen, every person living here must feel like the first degree citizen, and they don't have a difficulty with the system. Then we can talk about the future. So, and Turkey can bring these not existing, perhaps, or perhaps not existing properly elements, new culture, new religion, strong young population, hardworking people, a lively economy, energy sources. So we will take the burden, some of the burden from Europe. And I'm always saying that if visa is properly imposed, we will perhaps have to think about limiting the European Union citizens coming to Turkey, because they will find more jobs in Turkey than Turks coming to Europe and looking for jobs.
All right. So we might have witnessed the birth of a new family here today at this panel. Anyway, I hope this works. We don't have time for questions. We just have time for the app now, and it's a multiple choice question. It should appear on the screens, I think. We've never done this. Guillaume, can you hear me? Now would be the time.
And
there you go.
Here it is.
Okay, so the Turkey deal. Is that the solution to Europe's migration problems? That would be number one. Of course, talking about the agreement with Turkey that was struck at yesterday's summit. Or are you more critical and you say it's a start and better than what leaders came up with before? Or is it a stopgag that is unlikely to work? Or is it just a European illusion born from an EU in dysfunction? That's probably not what you would choose, right? Okay.
No.
I think it takes about 20 seconds to get the results, depending on your voting. Oh, Turkey is back in the Eurovision Song Contest, right?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Just go ahead. All right, we have the results. Okay. Rather on the positive side here, you can see the results. The winner is number 2. It's a start and better than what leaders came up with before. But a little worrisome here, number 4 has more than number 1.
Yep.
What? You obviously have to choose number 1, right?
I probably would have chosen number 2 myself, because we have to be cautious how it comes to work, and also we need to know that the flow of migrants, of refugees, may shift, and so instead of this route, they may come via the Arctics on bicycles from Russia to Norway and Finland, or the Mediterranean route may pop up again. So I would stay. We would be 26.8% now.
Okay. Yeah. You always find a way of being more positive than what's actually written there.
Sorry, I always sound. But you know what? Here is my question.
Let the minister say what he would have chosen.
I would have chosen 2 as well, because I think the performance will change the opinion. If we ask this question 2 months later or 3 months later, then I would really hope that the answer will be 1.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming. Thank you for the insights. Thank you for the answers.
Thank you for having us.
And I think we have a coffee break now, and next panel in half an hour. Thanks for your attention.